Hello and welcome. My name is Natty Cash, and we are back with some NFL predictions. We are into week 5 now. Crazy to think that we're already into October and starting another month of football. Last week I did get 10 out of the 16 matches correct. This week we only have 14 matches as we have a bye for a few of the teams. So we'll look through each of these 14 matchups and I will give my predictions. Starting off with all the AFC matchups, our first one here is the Buffalo Bills up against the Houston Texans. For me, the Bills are probably the better team here, although they did lose in decisive fashion to the Ravens. Houston's also have looked good, or at least been getting wins on the board. The thing that I see with the Texans is that they haven't really asserted a sense of dominance in these games. They've done enough to win, but I'm concerned about when they hit some of the top teams in the AFC that they're going to struggle, like the Bills. So I am going to edge the Bills to get a win here. I think they won't really let the Ravens game affect them too much, and they're going to move forward and beat the Texans here. The next matchup is the Colts and Jaguars in an AFC South matchup. Jaguars are the only 0-4 team left on the schedule, which, again, it's tough because a lot of their games have only been lost by like less than a touchdown. The only one was the blowout against the Bills, but when they played the Dolphins and the Browns and last week against the Texans, they are kind of within the game, but they didn't really look like they were going to take advantage of that and push forward for a win. Right? Houston did well to then come back and win that one. Where the Colts have a little bit more gumption to them, right? Went out and beat the Steelers. Now the problem is who's going to be a quarterback? Is it going to be Anthony Richardson, right, or is it Joe Flacco? I actually forgot to look to see if there are any injury updates for Anthony Richardson, but Joe Flacco, even with him there, he's a reasonably good quarterback that can take this team and get wins on the board. And so until Jacksonville can show me that they can get wins on the board, I have to go with the Colts to get the victory here. Next, we then look at the AFC North, where we have the Ravens going into Cincinnati. Cincinnati gets their first win on the board against the Panthers, where then the Ravens maybe found what their goal or what their season is going to look like and how to then play their best football with their big win against the Bills. I think that the Ravens could be taking that momentum forward and getting another win. The Bengals need to beat some better opponents before I'm going to start comparing them to the Ravens at this point. I do hope for the Bengals that they can start going on a run and potentially push their way into the playoffs. But right now, a win against the Panthers won't convince me of that. Next, we've got the AFC East, the Dolphins against the Patriots. Both teams lost last week. The question I have is, what are the Dolphins going to do? Right now, without Tua in the lineup, it's really difficult for the Dolphins to really do anything. Right, the quarterbacks they brought in, right, have not filled in that role. And when you lose against Tennessee, who has really been dismal for most of the year, it's hard to say that they're going to come in and beat even the Patriots, where the Patriots have got a couple nice wins on the board. They've played competitively, even though they faced a really tough 49ers team last week. They have an opportunity where they can fight for wins, and I think they're going to be able to fight and get the win here as well, beating the Dolphins. The last full AFC matchup is an AFC West matchup between both teams that are 2-2, which maybe most people would have looked and saw that was a surprise. The Raiders did well last week. Who did they beat again? I'm trying to remember. They beat the Browns at home, and then the Broncos went into Jets territory and beat them. And so both of these teams look decent enough that they can get wins on the board. I'm curious now the trajectory of Bo Nix and the Broncos. where then, maybe from week one, they looked like there was going to be some struggle there. But now with 2 straight wins on the board against the Buccaneers and then the Jets, the Broncos seem like they could do some damage and could go on a run. And I think here they're going to continue that run and get the victory over the Raiders. That could make this team potentially a dark horse to then get into the playoffs, perhaps. And we'll see how that looks as we move forward through the season. Next, we have then all of the interconference matchups. So we have, to start, we have our London game, our Jets and Vikings going over to London to play an early morning matchup, or at least early morning for the United States. So when looking at that matchup, the Vikings 4-0, incredible, right? Beat the Packers last week. Doesn't look like there's much that can stop them, right? It will be interesting to see at what point, which matchup they're going to eventually get their first loss, but I don't think it's going to happen here. The one contributing factor that could come in is the soccer field. Similar to what we saw in Brazil, if the soccer field is of a different quality than with the football field, you might have a little more errors, a little more slippage, which could then cause a little bit more evening of each of these teams. But with the Jets losing to the Broncos, I think there's still a few things that they have to figure out in order to really push and convince me that they're going to defeat the Vikings that are running hot right now. So the Vikings are going to get my pick here. Now, the next matchup, the Browns and the Commanders, if I looked at this matchup at the beginning of the year, I probably said, yeah, probably the Browns are going to be the team that wins this. It's hard to know what the Commanders are going to do with a rookie quarterback. At this point, my opinions are fully swapped. I think Jaden Daniels could easily be the rookie of the year. He seems to be getting better with every single game that he's playing. And there's lots of question marks for the Browns. Is Deshaun Watson going to be the quarterback of the future? Many rumors of, we can't really do much because he has this crazy contract. So we're going to maybe just have to play that contract out. Like, I think the Browns are in a very tough position on what to do with Deshaun Watson. And if you replace him as a quarterback, and you have to release him like that, it really affects your cap hit. So there's so much going on with the Browns. And I don't think it's getting better anytime soon. I'm going to give the Commanders the victory here. That will put the Commanders at 4-1, which is awesome for them to see them at 4-1, and really changes what the NFC East and the total NFC picture might be moving forward. Okay, if they can keep up that hot hand, you don't know what they could do. The next matchup we have is the Dallas Cowboys, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Steelers did lose their first game against the Colts, and the Cowboys did well enough to get a victory on Thursday night against the Giants. I'm again concerned about where the Cowboys are, only sitting 2-2. The only benefit that I am giving them is that maybe with that mini bye week, they can be a little bit more refreshed or have a better game plan as they go in to play Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh has looked decent this year, only getting now the one loss against the Colts. We will see then maybe the Cowboys can look at what the Colts did defensively or offensively to then put pressure on Pittsburgh. But this one's a tough one to pick. I am going to lean towards Cowboys, but I'm certainly not confident that that's going to be the case. But I'm going to pick the Cowboys to go in and win this. Maybe that few extra days of rest or extra days to prepare will give them the slight edge over Pittsburgh. And finally, the last interconference matchup is the Saints on Monday night going out to Kansas City. And this matchup is kind of more intriguing because the Saints have been pretty decent throughout the year. And really, when they lose, like losing to the Falcons last week, it's pretty close. Looks like they're going to be competitive. I think they might still miss out on the playoff picture, but could have a real solid chance of getting the NFC South title as well. And Kansas City is 4-0. And it's 4-0 in maybe not a fancy fashion either. Like they're doing just enough to get wins, which is scary for the rest of the league, because what happens when things are clicking, right? And when Patrick Mahomes get into playoff mode, what is this team going to look like? They could be utter dominant if then their offense could get rolling in the same way as their defense. So I still see in this scenario, there's nothing that would tell me otherwise that Kansas City can't get the win here, move 5-0, because they're not even running at full capacity right now. If they can do that, there's not many teams that are going to be able to put up a fight against them. So I have Kansas City getting the victory here. And finally, let's go take a look at the NFC matchups. So we have the NFC South division game, which is the Bucks versus the Falcons. I'm curious to see how these two teams are going to match up. They both look decently solid in their losses, other than, like for Atlanta, they've been in kind of every game and pushed teams well. Bucks have done the same. The only blip they had was that loss against the Broncos, but they did well to come back and beat the Eagles handily. So this is an interesting balance. Like you could go with the idea that the Buccaneers will beat Eagles by more points than the Falcons, which maybe might seem that the Tampa Bay is a little bit better. But then the Falcons maybe, with a home advantage, gives them an opportunity. I go back and forth with this, and Thursday night game, prime time, things change a little bit there as well. I was almost going to go with Atlanta to begin with, but I might have convinced myself that Tampa Bay might be the better team here. And if they can get a win, I think that would be very key for them if they want to repeat as NFC South champions, right? Getting a nice win over Atlanta, right? What that would mean for the rest of the NFC South is that the Buccaneers would sit at 4-1 and push the Falcons down to 2-3, which then it makes it difficult for Atlanta to work their way back up the standings in the division. So I thought I was going to go with Atlanta initially. I'm going to go with Tampa Bay here. Next, we have the Carolina Panthers going out to Chicago. Carolina, a couple weeks ago, got their first win on the board after switching to Andy Dalton as their main quarterback. They did lose to the Bengals last week. Chicago, on the other hand, with Caleb Williams, did get a decent win against the LA Rams, and maybe things are starting to click there. It'll be interesting to see how they compare to the veteranship of Andy Dalton, but I think perhaps for Carolina, that was just the one-game bump, kind of in the same way you get when there's a change in a coach. Or, in this case, a change in a starting quarterback. Just a different voice allowed them to get that win a couple weeks ago. So I do think the Bears are a little bit of the better team here, and they're going to get the home win against Carolina. Then we have the Cardinals going to the 49ers in an NFC West matchup. Cardinals had a tough game facing Jaden Daniels and the Commanders. They're now going in and going to have another tough game against the 49ers. 49ers did well to play and beat the Patriots, and now that George Kittle is healthy, maybe they're going to start to roll like they did last year, and I don't really see why not. I'm going to give them the win here. I do think the Cardinals are better than they were last year and are going to be better against other teams. I think this is maybe just a tough run in their schedule, and Arizona are going to get another loss here. Then we have the Giants coming off of a Thursday night loss, playing against the Seattle Seahawks. The Seahawks are interesting because when you look at most of their games, right, they were 3-0 going into last week, and they ended up losing to Detroit. But really the 3-0 was probably like the softest 3-0, and I mean that in the nicest way possible. But when you're beating teams like, you beat Denver, and then who else did they beat? They beat the Dolphins without a real quarterback, and who else? Then they beat the Patriots. Going against the Lions, I don't think I would have expected them to win. Now, they did maybe better than what I thought they would, right? 42-29 is a respectable score against a playoff team and a team that got to the NFC Championship game. So I do see the Seahawks getting the better of the Giants here. What could be to the Giants' favor is if they can use that mini bye week to help them out, but I think there's a lot of issues there. Malik Neighbors is a great piece in that team, but he can catch 100 yards worth of every week, and still the Giants are going to lose. And so I do see the Seahawks getting the victory here. Lastly, we do have the Packers versus the Rams. The Rams are dealing with a lot of injury issues, and I think that's affecting them overall. The Packers have Jordan Love back. I'm curious to see if there's any more injury issues with Jordan Love, because he didn't look the same coming back against the Vikings. I do see that he is probably going to be better this week than last week, and I think Green Bay can get the win here. I just hope that the Packers didn't rush back him too early. You could have had Malik Willis start maybe one or two more games, make sure that he's really healthy so that they can go on a playoff run. But I do see that the Packers are going to get a win over the Rams. The Rams, I think, are just going to have a tough time here until some of their injuries come back and they can get some flow back. I do see the Packers winning this one. So here we have just week 5. All the different matchups that I chose here. So take a look at them. If you want to put your own predictions in the comments below, that would be awesome. If you want to chat about any of them or you disagree with any of them, please let me know. I am more than happy to have a conversation in the comments as well. Please like and subscribe, as I want to do this each week. I also do predictions for English Premier League and Champions League games as well, if you're interested in that kind of stuff too. So thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time. Bye for now.